everyone. We want to welcome you to our presentation today for February Psychology Month 2025.
Try to bring up your curiosity instead of kind of sticking with your assumptions about, I know why you think this way or you want to do this. Validate the other person through action. It could even be more powerful. Avoiding the but after validating is crucial. So let's first talk about what typically happens in when we have disagreement with other people in conflictual relationship or tenuous relationship, right? So a lot of times when two people or two groups of people in a conflictual relationship, there usually there could be a lot of dichotomous or black and white thinking. So these are some of the signs that of black and white thinking, right? So people go with the either or. There is a right or wrong, right? People go with a right or wrong way of thinking about something. There's a lot of judgments like should or shouldn't, right? You shouldn't be thinking this way. You shouldn't talk like this, right? And you shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing this other thing instead. Um, there are a lot of usually there's a lot of judgments in the conversation, right? In the discussion. So a lot of good and bad, and in the way we think about the topic. There could be things like judgments like this is stupid, this is nonsense, you're being too emotional, right? So laying judgments towards the other person, right? Um, and then the focus, the objective of the people who are involved in that discussion or disagreement tend to focus on winning the argument rather than or being right, rather than focusing on prioritizing the relationship. And the other characteristics of conflictual relationship, right, or tenuous relationship, especially when people disagree, is that there's a lack of effort or lack of engagement with differing perspectives. So usually there's a lack of consideration or willingness to consider or entertain viewpoints that are different from our own. And then so what typically happens is that we fall into this polarization trap. And so basically what it is that people, there's tension, right? There's on two sides, right? There's polarization, right? People are getting more and more away, right? Further away from the middle, and people become very rigid and more rigid and extreme in their opposing positions or views, which leads to even more unwillingness to consider alternative perspectives in looking at the same situation, right? And it's very difficult, then it becomes very difficult for the two parties or two people to find common grounds or engaging in constructive dialogues or discussion to come in to find some resolutions, right, towards the problem. And the polarization often also could reinforce a lot of division, right? Increased hostility, a lot of anger, resentment, right? What are some potential solutions, right, for to try to approach disagreement in relationship that we really care about, right? In relationship that we want to have a long-term relationship with that person. We want to show them that we love and we care about them. Even if we cannot come to an agreement or if we do not agree with the other person. So here are a couple of solutions that I would like to share with you. And these solutions or skills are from a model of psychology or psychotherapy that I practice. which is dialectical behavior therapy. So the first solution, and we also call them the middle path skills. And so the first solution is to think and act dialectically, and the other one is validation. So I'm going to spend a bit more time on each one. So let's first talk about what is dialectics, right? I want to have a chance to explain what that is. In a nutshell, it is a view about the nature of reality. It's our world view, right? It was originated from ancient Greek philosophy. It also has a deep connection with Zen Buddhism. So it's this Eastern philosophy of like, how to uh, you know, to process our experience of being alive, right? Our living experience. The dialectics highlights the paradox of reality, right? So what is the paradox? The paradox speaks to the reality that two things that seem to be opposite or are completely different could be true at the same time. And as I said before, this is a concept central to a type of therapy that I practice. It's called dialectical behavior therapy, which is a treatment approach, evidence-based treatment approach developed by psychologist Dr. Marsha Linehan. Dialectics teach us is that change is the only constant, right? So change happens when there is a synthesis of the opposites. Often through an ongoing process of interactions and resolutions of the opposing forces and contradictions. And it's inevitable. And that's the only thing that we could count on, is that change is the only constant. Now, change is also transactional. So it's not just one-sided. It's not just one person having an influence on the other person, right? It's actually often like both ways. It happens both ways, and it's also a very dynamic process, right? It's not just like one time and then and then like having it right on A to B and then B to A and then that's it, right? It's through multiple ongoing changes, right? In both sides through the conversations and uh, um, influence on each parties, and then eventually lead to a transformation. And even with the transformation, it could be ongoing. So here are some examples of dialectics, right? And so you could find dialectical experiences within us, or it could also be between different people, right? So have you ever had the experience of, you want to go out, you want to do something because you're like, bored, right? And, you're having cabin fever, right? Because you've been staying home for a long time. And at the same time, you also want to stay home, right? You want to go out and you also want to stay home. Another example could be like, we have both good thoughts and bad thoughts, right? I mean, good and bad are judgments. We try to stay away from that. But but we could have, really good thoughts. We want to do nice, kind things for other people. And at the same time, it's also true as a reality that we all have bad thoughts about other people. I wish something bad happening to this person because I'm really upset with them. I'm really they really hurt me, right? So we could have both good thoughts and bad thoughts happening at the same time. We also could have, we could be doing good deeds and bad deeds, right? And we'll do things that are really kind and having empathy for other people. At the same time, we all have done things that we're not very proud of. We'll be, we don't want to tell other people this is what we've done, right, to other people, to hurt other people. And then another example would be, we could experience both love and hate towards the same person, right? Oh, I'm just so angry with you. I hate you. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to see you again. And at the same time, we have a lot of love, at least deep down, right? Even if it is like at that moment when we were feeling a lot of hatred and resentment, we don't feel the love. We have both the love and hate towards the same person. Um, Sometimes, and working with a lot of individuals, especially clients who could be like neurodivergent, right? Like, there's this longing to have a deeper connection with other people. And at the same time, we just want to be alone. We just don't want to just want to stay away from other people. It's just too much, too overstimulating. We just want to withdraw. Um, you can't help like having this long yearning, like to have a deeper connection, meaningful with connection with other people. Sometimes when we're trying a new activity, we could have both excitement and anxiety. Uh, you know, uh, Noticing, at the beginning at the same time, right? Feeling anxious and nervous, and feeling excited. Yeah, this is something new, right? Um, at the same time. So these are different experiences. Sometimes we could disagree with the rules. You may not always agree with, like the rules at work, or, in a public facilities with our government, and we could follow the rules at the same time. And we could have disagreement with our friends about, you know, politics, or how things are run, and, how to raise our kids, and we could still be friends with that person. Synthesizing the opposites, right? So with the dialectics, is it means finding the middle path. So finding a middle ground to try to a new way of approaching and synthesizing the differences. And this is especially important if what in the context of in a conversation about uh, having relationship, right? Meaningful relationship with someone that we care about, right? Or maintaining our self-respect. It's even more important for us to notice that we're polarizing, so we don't go farther and farther away from each other, right? But we try to preserve the relationship, improve the relationship by finding that middle ground. We could try to find that middle path by honoring the truth on both sides of a conflict or disagreement. So finding truth in the opposite. And I'm going to give some examples about that as well. One thing to keep in mind is that when we are trying to find truth on both sides, honoring the truth on both sides, it doesn't mean that we're going to be giving up like our beliefs or values. Doesn't mean that you have to like what the other person's saying or agree with what the other person's saying. You could hold your beliefs, right? And you could, and hold your values, uh, but instead of saying, my beliefs and values are the only one, right? Are the only thing that is true, right? You're saying you're looking for some truth in the other beliefs or values, or thinking, right? That finding the kernel of truth in the other person. And like I said, I'll give you some example. Um, Relating to that, we want to avoid assumptions. We want to avoid judgments, blaming the other person, right? Or blaming ourselves. We also want to avoid dichotomous or black and white thinking, and letting go of right or wrong. So these are the middle path skills: thinking and acting dialectically, and validation. How do we think and act dialectically? So here are some examples. So when we do this, we need to set the intention of uh, emphasizing both and, rather than either or, right? So letting go of that right or wrong, and some of the extreme statements, like, this is you're like always, right? Always true, always wrong, right? You are like, never, right? So these are extreme words that we want to avoid. We look for the both, right? Like we look for things that we could try to, like, find the both, emphasizing the both. And that's another very key word, right? And so, for example, if working with a teenager, right? Or you have like if you have a teenager, right? You know, and if the teenager is like complaining that, oh, my mom's really strict, like, she doesn't want me to go out, right? Go out, hang out with my friends, right? Like late at night, right? But go to a movie, right? Late. And um, working with the teenager, to help her find the dialectics in her thinking, it might be, okay, well, it is true. Yeah, your mom is straight. My mom is really straight, right? And she really cares about me. So this is an and statement, right? Connecting both are true rather than my mom is really strict, I hate her, right? Um, uh, Another example, my partner may not always know what to say to comfort me, right? And and at the same time, they take care of me, right? They try to show that they care about me in their way, right? In their own way. I can see why you want to go to this party, right? And I have concerns about your safety if you go. Right? Like there are a lot of people who are using drugs. This is an older crowd, and yeah, I don't know. I really have concern about your safety, but I can see why, and I can see why you really want to go because your friends are going. Um, Another example, I could see your point of view, and you know, I do not agree with it. We could keep our own agreement. We don't have to say, yeah, you're right, right? Or oh, I'm wrong, right? Or I'm right and you're wrong. We could try to honor both, right? So I see your point of view. You have a point, right? And and I don't agree with you, right? I have a different way of looking at things. This is another example. Homelessness is a real crisis and has caused many problems. And homeless people are most vulnerable people in society and need a lot of support. And most people don't choose to be homeless. It's not a choice. So we could practice looking at all sides of a situation and all points of view. Try to be curious, right? Try to bring up your curiosity instead of like, kind of sticking with your assumptions about, I know why you think this way or you want to do this, right? So, try to bring up your curiosity and be um, yeah, like it just be very mindfully, right? And not judging, right? Just be very curious. Asking one thing that the type of therapy that we do, right? The DBT therapist that we often ask is what is being left out, right? So you could ask, right? When you find yourself being polarized, having like getting stuck in a disagreement with a loved one, with another human being, you could ask, what is being left out of my way of perceiving and experiencing this situation, right? I know why I think this way. I understand my logic. And I wonder, are there any other way of looking at this situation? Letting go of judgment, right, wrong, shouldn't, right, and blame. So for example, like if again, like between a parent and a daughter, right? Or a child, right? Like, so a teenage daughter wants to go out late, right? Until 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Because her friends are going to a party and everybody's going to be there, all her friends. And the mom doesn't want the daughter to go out until 1 o'clock. I could totally really, understand that being a mom of two teenage kids myself. So the mom could ask, I wonder. Okay, so I know why I don't want my daughter to go out until 1 o'clock. I have very good reasons, right? I have concern for her safety and everything. And I wonder, like, so why she really wants to stay out that late until 1 o'clock? Like, be really curious about that, right? If I were in her shoe, why would I want to stay out until 1 o'clock, right? And then the daughter could also, right, also like, because working on towards relationship, want to have better relationship with mom, right? The daughter could also do the same thing, right? Being curious. It's like, I wonder, I know why I really want to be, out until 1 o'clock with my friends, right? To go to this party. And I wonder why, my mom want me to be home by 10 o'clock instead of 1. Um, Another example, right? This is between a husband and a wife, right? So the wife wants to the husband to give her a call, right? And when he's out late with his buddies, right? And the husband doesn't really want to do it. And so the wife could be the husband could be curious, right? Instead of saying, well, she's trying to control me, right? So that's a judgment, right? Or assumption. Um, if the goal is to improve the relationship, right? To resolve the conflict and by thinking and acting dialectically, the husband could ask, try to be curious. I wonder, why does she want me to call when I'm out hanging out with my friends, right? Other than being controlling, right? Other than the reasons that the assumption that like, she's being trying to control me, right? Are there any other reasons? Um, and the wife could ask, like, why does he not want to give me a call when he's out with his buddies? Again, like not letting go of the judgment, letting go of the assumption that, well, that's because like, he's gonna do something behind my back, right? So letting go of that. And especially when there's no like kind of solid evidence to support that kind of thinking, right? Try to like hear the husband out and be curious. I wonder why, right? Let me just try to think about that. Um, and we could also another example, how do people end up being drug addicts other than being X, Y, Z, right? So other than like a bunch of X, Y, Z being all the judgment. Another way to practice thinking and acting dialectically is to use the I statement. So instead of saying you are, you should, right? Or that's just the way it is, right? Because I said so, right? That's very also right like yeah like speaking as an authority figure, right? Telling the other person what you should or should not do, and you can't do this because this is what I said, right? um so so instead of using statements like that, we want to own it, right? And say, well, use the I statement. So for example, uh in the same situation, the that I was example that I was using earlier, so the monk could say, worried about your safety when you're out so late, rather than you should not be going out. You should listen to me. Um, the daughter could say, express how she feels, right? I feel angry when you say I cannot go out late because that's just the way it is, right? So using I statement. Um, uh, Same example as before. The husband could say, well, I want to be carefree when I'm out with my friends, right? Without worrying about the time and when I have to give you a call. This is a reason. And the wife could say, well, when you're out and I don't hear from you after midnight, I start worrying about you. Um, so expressing their thoughts and feelings, right, without using the I statement, without uh, adding a lot of judgments and should and shouldn't. Um, Reminding ourselves that, right, we're all connected, and embracing change, right? So change is inevitable. Validation basically it's a communication to the other person that that we understand their um, thoughts, emotions, and actions, a cause, and therefore they're totally understandable. Uh, if we do not agree, necessarily agreeing with the other person, right? So validation is not about um, telling the other person you're right, right? And I agree with you. It's not, they are not the same thing. It's basically um, just communicating, right? A way for us to communicate to the other person that I hear you, I understand. Though I look at the situation very differently. I have a different opinion, but I can see where you're coming from, right? And for most of us, we could use words to communicate the validation, right? Just telling the other person, right, how you could see that the person's actions or thoughts and feelings make sense. And sometimes if we could validate the other person through action, it could even be more powerful, right? So an example of validation through action could be like, if you see someone like a friend, like, kind of like acting like kind of down or like being very quiet, right? You know, and not really like, kind of beside themselves, right? You could go up to the friend and say, "Hey, I see that you seem to be like kind of off today, right? What's going on?" Right? Can I give you a hug? Right? So that is verbally communicating and also showing through action, right? That you're you're validating. Yeah, it sounds like they need a hug, right? Um, it could be if you see someone like carrying a lot of books, right, and they don't have their hands like they cannot open the door, right? When you go into a building, and you open the door for them, that is an example of validation through action. Um, uh, so sometimes these kind of gestures and actions could be even more powerful than words. Right? Another example that I often use when I kind of try to illustrate the power of validation through action is like think of if your neighbor, right? If your neighbor's house like is kind of you notice like smoke coming out, there's a fire, right? There are fires going on, right? There may be a fire inside. Um, you may not want to just say, "Oh my God, right? Your house is like I could see smoke coming out. You must be really scared, right? Your situation is very dangerous, right?" I don't think that your neighbors would appreciate you just validating them through word verbally telling them how what a dangerous situation they're in and they must be really scared. They would want you to do something, which is like take action by like calling the ambulance. Or sorry, the fire truck, right? Calling 911. So that's another example to show that action through validating through action could be very, very powerful. In order to learn to validate, we have to first notice, right? Observe without judging ourselves that um, when we do these kind of behaviors, we're invalidating the other person. And we all do that, including myself, right? And we all do that. It happens in all relationship, whether it's with loved one or with other people that we don't really know. So it's important not to judge, right? It's more important to just notice. Um, so when we invalidate, we have a tendency we tend to reject or punish communications of emotions and thoughts, right? And the other thing that we do is that we oversimplify the ease of problem solving, right? We just make it sound so like easy, right? I'll just do this and that, right? So these are some examples, right? Telling someone that like, don't be such a drama queen, right? You're overly sensitive. Um, and don't think like that, right? Boys don't cry, right? You're acting weak. You're crazy. How do you think? How could you think that? That's just crazy. Um, and what's the big deal? Just do it, right? So that's an example of oversimplifying the ease of problem solving. Um, you know, uh, I don't know why it's a big deal, right? Just tough it out, right? You can do it, right? And shrug your shoulder, right? Another thing that I often hear, actually, example, and these are all real example. And the last one that I often hear is that sometimes parents will tell their teenage kids, right, you have food and a roof above your head. You should be thankful and focus on things that you have. You have no reasons to feel sad and depressed. It's people living in Gaza. Think about those people living on the street. So um, I the the person who say this kind of stuff, right? And I think like including parents, I mean, they mean well. They want to help, these parents, right? Or partners or family members, they want to like help their loved ones put things in perspective. I mean, there's some truth in what they're saying, right? I definitely could find some truth in what they're saying. It is true, right? And at the same time, it could come across as very invalidating and it's communicating to the other person that you shouldn't feel sad or depressed, that you have no reason or no right to feel it, right? Because of this and that. And we all do that. So again, right? So there's no need to judge ourselves. And it happens in even good relationship, like not good, but like healthy relationship. We all do that. And um, something that to kind of keep in mind, be mindful, and if you want to improve relationship, then you may want to do more of the validation, right? And act more like more in a validating way, right? Because if the relationship is not healthy, right, as it has a lot of conflict, right, it's kind of it's tenuous, right, it's kind of unstable. If the majority of the interaction is like based on like invalidation, it could really put damage the relationship further. So you may want to actually make an effort to increase the percentage of like of time you do more validating, make more validating statement, and do validating action. Why validate? Why is it important to validate? And when we validate, right, communicate to the other person that it makes, yeah, like it totally makes sense that you feel this way or think this way, right? That you want to do this. When we do that, it let go of pressure to prove who's right and who's wrong. So remember, we're doing practicing validation because we want to, we want to get out of that polarization trap. We don't want to get further and further, rigid and extreme in our way of thinking and uh, uh, in the up like creating that tension, right? And creating conflict. We want to come up with a middle path. So when we validate, we just let go of that pressure to prove who's right and wrong. It improves relationship, uh, decrease hurt and anger, right? Create closeness, and making problem solving and support to the other person is needed when needed possible, right? And because if we jump right into, well, you're wrong, right? This is stupid, right? Like, the way you think, and, then I mean, just ask yourself, right? If you make a statement and the other person say this kind of stuff, or implying that like you don't know what you're talking about, right? You're wrong. Naturally, your defense is gonna come up. You're just trying to, like, you like try to like defend your position and say, well, I'm not stupid and I'm not wrong, right? So if the other person actually, the loved one actually need problem solving and needs support, when we invalidating it's harder to actually offer the support and problem solving that they need, right? When we further get polarized, and it's painful and hurtful when we're being invalidated. Important things to remember: only validate what is valid, right? So what is valid, right? What are some of the things that are valid? So facts are valid. The person's thoughts, feelings, desires, urges to act, are all facts that we could validate. And let's say if my son come home, right, and say, uh, you know, he got into a fight with someone at school, right, and because this other kid pushed him, right, and he was really angry, right? And he like punched the kids, right? And got called to this principal's office. And so I could validate that, yeah, like I could see why you're angry, right? That you really want to hurt that kid, right? Because like, yeah, you're hurt, right? You're really upset, you're really angry. So I could validate those are facts for this person, for my son, for this, in this example, for my son, right? These are all valid facts, right? But I may not, I would not want to validate what is the invalid, which is ineffective behavior that could cause problems for the other person. So I would not want to validate that it is okay for you to punch this other kid, right? To hurt this other kid. Because if I do that, right, chances are that's going to reinforce that behavior. They are, my son is like, well, even my mom thinks that I should punch that, it's okay, or I should punch that kid, right? So he's more likely to do that again. And if I really love and care about that person, I don't want that person to keep doing the same thing, right? I would want the other person to consider other way of approaching that situation, the problem. And in order for me to offer that kind of support, right, I have to first find a way to validate the other person's experience. So thoughts, feelings, desires, why they wanted to act the way they did. Uh, and we could always find something to validate. Uh, and if another thing about validation is that I think I mentioned earlier, validation is not the same as agreeing or liking someone's different opinions or perspective, right? We could validate even if we don't agree, right? Seeing how the other person's experiences make sense given their history, thoughts, feelings, and the current context, right? And communicate to that other person. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. These are a few, this is a guide to validate from Dr. Lenihan's DBT therapy. And so I'm just going to give you some quick example. In order to validate, you have to look for materials to validate. We could always find something to validate, right? Even if we don't agree. And in order to do that, we have to pay attention for materials that you could use to validate. So the basic requirement is that you need to be attentive, right? You need to listen, right? And watch. You could accurately reflect, try to accurately reflect what you heard back or hear, right? And you say it back to that other person, right? And if so, the same example, if my son said like, I was like, so angry with this kid, and right, so I could say, yeah, you're angry. I hear that you were angry. If you use that word, I just use the same word. That's the basic, right? Easy way to validate by accurate reflection. You could read minds, right? And so by paying attention to the person's facial expression, body language, current situation, and what you know about the person, and you articulate what is not being said by the other person, right? And so again, based on what my son said, I could say, yeah, well, yeah, you don't think that is fair, right? That only you got called into the principal's office, but not your friend, right? Or that you're the one who got punished, but not this other kid at school. He may not have said that to me, but if this is what I think he's saying, underlying message that I don't believe that he has about the situation, I could articulate it. But be open to corrections, right? Because that is still, I'm just trying to make an assumption based on, my attention to, based on this, the individual's facial expression, body language, and stuff like that, right? And I could be wrong, right? And if the person tell me, no, this is not what I think, that this is not how I feel, then I don't insist that, well, well, I'm right? You just don't know what you're thinking and feeling, right? That would be an example of invalidation. If the person tell me, no, this is not true, this is not what I think and feel, you have to let that go. We could also validate by communicate to the other person, that we understand that their feelings, thinking makes sense given the person's history, current state of mind, current events, even if you do not agree with the person's behavior. So these are some examples. You have a few deadlines coming up. I see why you're feeling stressed and you don't think that you have time to clean up your room. Like if you ask your kid to come up to clean up their room, and they say, right, like, no, I can't do it, right? And you're getting frustrated, right? You want them to do it, right? You could validate first, right? Yeah, you have deadlines coming up. I can see why you're stressed. You don't want to do it, right? And I'll come back to the end later. You've been hurt in a previous relationship. It makes sense why you're cautious about trusting me, right? If you're in a new relationship, you notice that person is not really throwing himself fully into the new relationship with you. You could validate, right? And it makes sense why you're cautious about trusting me. Another example, you feel hurt. I understand why you don't want to go to school and don't want to be around your friend. So this could be an example of, like, again, like if my son doesn't want to go to school after a fight, right? Or if a daughter, right, is hurt, right, because she finds out that, oh, like some of my friends are, they go into the mall without inviting me, and they feel hurt, right, and they don't want to go to school. So I could disagree with her, and at the same time, I think the best way to approach it is first by validating their feeling and why they don't want to go to school. Acknowledging the valid, right? Showing that you see the other person's thoughts, feelings, and actions are valid given the current reality and facts, right? It makes, it makes total sense that you want to fight back, that you're really angry. Anyone in your position would feel the same way. Um, uh, and another example, how could you not feel hurt by what these friends did, right? I would too if I were in your shoes, right? In your situation. Um, this other example is about, I get it, you're getting older and you want to have more autonomy and independence. I remember how much I wanted that for myself when I was your age. So this is a conversation you could have with, again, with a teenager, right? So um, and then the next level of validation is to show equality. You treat the other person as an equal, as another human being, right? And or rather than as if someone that you could control or manipulate or have influence over, right? You just want to be very genuine. One last bit, about this talk, right? How to validate. So some of you might ask, right? Well, then if I have a different opinions, what do I do, right? So what we could do, right? If you care about a relationship and there's disagreement, you could validate the other person first, followed by, and here's what I think or believe. Hear me out. So avoiding the but after validating is crucial. I mean, think about why you don't want to use the word but. You put so much time, effort to try to validate this other human being. And then you say, but basically, when you say, as soon as you say but, you negated everything. You negate everything that you just validated, right? Like that why this other person's thought feelings make sense. So to find, right, this is another circling back to the importance of thinking and acting dialectically by looking for the both and, right? So this is, I hear you. This is the reason. I could understand why you think and feel this way and want to do this. And this is what I think, right here, right, hear me out.